wrapping up all the books I read for May. Probably the most infamous book in booktok is a lyrical masterpiece. I might have gotten bored with the story. Hello my lovely people, welcome back. My name is Viry for those of you who are new here. As you all saw in the thumbnail, today we're going to be reviewing and wrapping up all the books I read for May. May was a really busy month for me and I actually ended up not finishing my TBR. So we're just going to go over the books that I actually read for May. So get yourself a drink, some snacks. We're going to try to keep this quick, but let's go ahead and jump into the video. In total for May, I read 8 books. 2 of them were novellas and 6 of them were novels. 1 was a dark romance, 2 were historical fiction, 1 was regular fiction, 2 were fantasy, 1 was sci-fi, and 1 was a romance book. I want to do something a little bit different with this video where I'm going to be, rather than reviewing them in the order that I read, I want to review them based off the similar kind of genres and vibes and stuff like that overall. This is going to be a slightly different video from my other usual wrap-ups. Y'all can give me some feedback if you want on whether this is a good idea or not. So first off, let's start with the darker stuff, the stuff that gave me spooky vibes in spring summer. So funny enough, the first book that I did read for the month was Haunting Adeline by H.D. Carlton. I actually did read this towards the end of April but finished it early May and I just decided to keep it in my May wrap-up instead. I am a fan of going into books without really knowing the context of it. So moving forward with all of my reviews, I'm going to try to keep the summary at the minimum and not really give anything away and just kind of tell y'all more how I felt about the book. First off, I do want to say this is a dark romance. So there is trigger warnings for this. Please look up the trigger list. Haunting Adeline is probably the most infamous book in booktok because of its dark topics. There's a lot of mixed feelings on whether or not this is a good book. This is a reread for me. The first time I read it was back in 2022, it looks like. I obviously reread it now because I saw my friend reading it and I'm just like, I kind of want to read it too and I want the physical copy this time around. As I mentioned, this is a dark romance. This has elements of stalkers and a spooky Victorian house and kinky, smutty stuff. So that's kind of what you're getting into when you're reading this. It's definitely more in like the dark Gothic aspect and I really enjoyed that kind of vibe. It has the romance and then it has a bit of a subplot. The first time reading it, I remember not very interested in the subplot, but the second time around, I was very much interested in the subplot. I feel like I put more attention to it this time around than I did the first time. It is definitely kind of outrageous in some parts. I enjoyed it. I do like this kind of dark stuff now and then. Is it my favorite book out there? No. Is it my favorite dark romance book? No. Is it dark? Yes. But overall, I thought it was an interesting book. I actually was there for the plot the second time around, so it got me. Like I mentioned, reread the first time around, I gave it a 3 out of 5. This time, I'm giving it a 3.5 out of 5. And as for spice, I am going to say a 3 out of 5. Another dark, mysterious, spooky kind of book that I read has been on my TBR not that long. Actually, I take it back. It has been on there for quite a bit. And I just kind of remembered it again because we were reading a Gothic book for my book club and this was my recommendation. So I read it anyway because I found it in the library. And that's why I don't have the physical copy with me, but I read Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. As I mentioned, it's in that same spooky kind of Gothic elements as the rest of the books that I'll be talking about in this section. And this one is not a dark romance. This is more of a historical fiction, suspense, thriller, horror kind of book. And this takes place in, oh, what year is it? I want to say this takes place in like 1930s, 1940s in Mexico. I believe I might be very off in the time. And it follows our main character, Noemi, who is just trying to help a cousin in this very spooky house with very interesting family members. Yeah, it's just, again, that very Gothic feel. Like you're there for that kind of vibe. I'm going to be saying vibe a lot. Oh my god, I'm gonna have to find another word for this. It's a very atmospheric book. It does have some horror elements and you don't know what's going on half of the time, which is like adds on to the mystery of the book. I also just really like the description of the Mexican culture in general as well. That's something that I'm very proud of. Our main characters are of high society, so this is not a representation of like full-on Mexican history or anything like that. I really thoroughly enjoyed myself reading it and I could not put it down. I I ended up rating this book a 4 out of 5. Now, the last book in this dark, spooky, gothic kind of feel is actually the book club book, and I read half of it and listened to the other half on audiobook, and that is A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. If you are looking for a book that reads like a classic, is a lyrical masterpiece, has vampires, and are just looking for like a spooky kind of novella, A Dowry of Blood. This story, the way I was describing it, is a love letter to an abuser, and it just is the reimagining of the Brides of Dracula basically, and it was just so interesting. The writing in this book, it is absolutely beautiful. Like, it is a gorgeous book. I am going to put some quotes up here just so you can see some of my favorite quotes. I am not prepared and did not write them down. This is one of those books that I had a lot of fun reading and a lot of fun listening to as well. Discussing it with my book club was so much fun as well, but I really did like that story. I gave it a 4 out of 5, and for spice I did give it a 2 out of 5. Now moving on to more lighthearted books that just were summer all around and were nice and fun. The first one we're going to start off with is Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. This is Emily Henry's new release. This was also another book that I read for another book club that I'm in. That one was an online one. This is a romance book. However, it's not just a romance book. It has a bit of a subplot where there is interviews happening to tell a whole different story. So it's a story within a story. You have your main romance plot following Alice and Hayden, and then you have your secondary plot following Margaret's life. You're just learning about this person, and these two journalists are just trying to write a book about her. And if I'm being honest, the romance went from like being the main thing to like being put in the back burner, which I wasn't upset about, but it is a romance book. So if you are going into this story thinking you're just going to read a rom-com, that's not necessarily it. I feel like the interview portion, the literary fiction, kind of historical fiction of it all, was a big emphasis towards the middle end. I feel like if it wasn't for that subplot though, I might have gotten bored with the story. It was, like I said, lighthearted, you know, beachy vibes and stuff like that. It was honestly really good. I feel like publishing houses are not doing a very good job at promoting their books for a certain genre. Like I mentioned, this does not necessarily feel like a romance book. Just like Abby Jimenez didn't feel only like a romance book, this was, I feel like, a little bit more leaning towards literary fiction, more towards like women's fiction rather than just romance. So overall, I'm going to say that this book was a 4 out of 5 for me. And as for spice, I'm going to say 2.5 out of 5. Now the book that I read after that was another library book. This was another kind of historical fiction book. It also had a romance plot to it as well, and that is The Lady and the Highwayman by Sarah M. Eden. I had never heard anyone talk about this book, but it was so cute and wholesome, and it left me so happy. And this book is just really quick, basically has that story of a woman pretending to be a man to be able to publish her own writing without being scrutinized by society for what she writes. And then you have her counterpart Fletcher, who was doing so great in this portion of like literature and was making so much money out of it until Elizabeth came and kind of took all of his customers away. And it's just a story between the two, and it follows this really big adventure. So the main focus is this adventure as they grow close together. And the best part of it all is that you could see their writing. I really like this story, and I want to continue the rest of the series. So when I go back to the library, I'm for sure picking up the second book. Like I said, so sweet, so wholesome. The way they came together, they were just like people who didn't know each other to like somewhat acquaintances to friends to eventually they like develop a romantic interest for each other, and it was just so cute and wholesome. So overall, I rated this book a 4.5 out of 5. The last book in this section is a summer staple. It is The 5-Star Weekend by Elin Hilderbrand. This book just screams summer. Not only the covers, not only kind of like the setting, but everything they do, it's just, I want to go to Nantucket. I want to go on a boat even though I get seasick. I want to have a nice little getaway with some friends. Stuff like that. Like everything that they were doing was just summer. And essentially it follows the story of a grieving widow who is trying to mourn the loss of her husband, and so she decides she wants to take a moment and host a 5-star weekend. Her 5 stars being her best friends from all points of her life and getting them all together just so she can have a support system around her. There's drama, there's grief, there's friendships. Everyone is going through something, and it just reminds you that like your problems are your own, but everyone else also has their own issues and problems that they're going through. It was such a beautiful story. I completely understand the hype around this book. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it, but it was exactly what I wanted. It was exactly what I needed. I really enjoyed it myself. And bonus point, it was screaming summer. I got so excited for summer, even though I get very cranky when it's like 90 degrees like today. I don't do very well in the heat. I will say though, one of the characters in here, Brooke, I feel like she deserved a proper apology. And that's it. That's all I'm going to say about that. But yeah, I loved this book. Overall, the story, I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. Now moving on to my last section of these books. These books were surprising and different. I really enjoyed myself reading these books too. So first we're going to start with Rehab by Kenna Kay. This is, as you can see, a novella. It's a small book. It is a sci-fi book. Originally, I don't know if I mentioned this, but the author actually reached out to me to see if I would give reading their book a try, and I said, sure.
Let me get it.
I want to read it. I want to have a copy for myself, so I bought it. And let me tell you, I really did like this book. It was so good. It is, like I mentioned, a sci-fi book, so it's set in a utopia world where love is artificially made, basically. And if you're grieving someone, you can get through that grief through this process called rehab and stuff like that. So it does follow kind of the storyline of our main character, Juliet, who has her heart broken and she literally is falling into depression and can't do anything. So her friend encourages her to take this process and go the synthetic route in healing. It really just makes us question how much is too much when it comes to technology. Should feelings be replicated in a synthetic way? And it just honestly posed a lot of questions. I really did like this story. Yeah, I really also loved the writing as well. So overall, I'm going to rate this a 4 out of 5. Really did surprise me and I really liked it. So thank you so much for reaching out and telling me about your book. And now the last book that I read for May, this was another book club book, and I read this one on my Kindle, hence why I don't have a physical copy. And it is The Game Scots Play by Abigail Owen. Sorry, my camera overheated. As I was saying, The Game Scots Play falls under modern fantasy / urban fantasy, so it is a fantasy book that takes place during kind of present times, sort of. It does follow Greek mythology too, so it actually is a story about our main character, who I am blanking on her name, Lyra. She is basically picked by Hades to be his champion to fight in this crucible where the gods decide who is going to be the next reigning king of the gods. Very much gives off Hunger Game vibes. There is the labors, which are kind of like the tests, the challenges that they go through, and that was so interesting. I love me a good challenge. I found it very interesting how they acknowledged the existence of other gods and religions, and this only affected the people that followed Greek mythology. I thought it was a very interesting book. It was very easy to read. There obviously is a romance aspect to it as well. I think the only feedback that I did have for this specific story is that the labors were cut short, and I hope that's not a spoiler, but they were kind of cut short. But it was a good book and I had a lot of fun discussing it in the book club, another online book club, and I feel like just trying to figure out what was going to happen next was so much fun talking to other people. Overall, I rated this book a 3.5 out of 5, and as for spice, I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5. But yeah, that's basically what I read. Like I said, it was a very different variety of books, and I'm sorry if this is your first wrap up of mine and I didn't go into the summaries of each book, but it was just making my videos extremely long. Let me know what you think about this format. Let me know if you read any of these books as well, or you could also let me know what your favorite book for May was. I think mine might have been A Dowry of Blood or The 5-Star Weekend, between those two. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't done so already and you would like to, please subscribe. I make book content and now and then I like to give y'all a peek of my life. Thank y'all so much for watching. Have a beautiful day. Happy reading, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye!